the Women's World Cup has come to an end. Record TV numbers, record revenue numbers. We'll share some of the numbers. 14.46 million people tuned in to the final in England on BBC and ITV. 12 million viewers. The Women's World Cup final becomes the BBC's second most viewed event of 2023, following the coronation of King Charles III in May. In Spain, an average audience of 5.6 million people tuned in for the game, with free-to-air broadcaster RTV gaining an audience share of 65.7%. Not bad. The World Cup as a whole has been a game changer for Aussies, Australia being one of the host nations. Australia and New Zealand hosted. FIFA, the local broadcaster 7, believes they reached 18.6 million Australians across the tournament on the screens of 7, which is the broadcast name, the local broadcaster. Massive numbers, massive stats. The revenue of the whole tournament was a highest ever $570 million US dollars. Great numbers. Well done. Great tournament. I personally did not follow, but we've seen huge, because I'm currently in Australia, we've seen huge momentum around this tournament. It was in every single paper, every single media outlet, every second billboard. Like the government's really invested here locally in pushing this World Cup. Now, one of the conversations that's come up is, again, pay equality. And for those of you who believe that there needs to be pay equality, I'm going to share some numbers of the men's tournament that happened in Qatar at the end of 2022. The men's tournament generated $6.7 billion US dollars in revenue. The men's final was watched by over 2.5 billion people, I believe, or around that number. The broadcasts of some of the games were in the tens of millions. And the economic impact was in the tens of billions of dollars as well to the host nation, which is Qatar. Over 4.5 million people visited. Australia, 1.5 million people visited, or 1.5 million tickets were sold. So, with all due respect, we need sometimes in life, we need to look at the facts, not the airy-fairy facts and the dreams and our what we believe is entitlement. We need to sit down and look at hardcore business, what makes sense business-wise. And I believe the pay equality conversation should not even be a conversation at the moment. I believe that the women's tournaments organizers need to put more effort into attracting more people. You know how many Italian reporters were at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar? 40. You know how many were in Australia? 0. What does that tell you? Right. So let's look at the numbers, look at the facts, and start comparing the two, even though we should never compare, because at the end of the day, everyone has their own league, and we should back the two leagues and help them grow and invest the time and the effort to get them to a level where they can ask for this pay equality. But what's happening right now is unrealistic entitlement has become the theme of the world. So anyway, that's my 5 cents.
Well, I mean, first of all, congratulations to the organizers in Australia and New Zealand for putting on a fantastic tournament. Obviously, those numbers indicate a successful endeavor. Both from viewership, revenue. They've got a great new champion in Spain, one that looks very poised to sit atop that perch for a while. The rest of the world is now, needs to catch up with with the Lady Spaniards. So overall, I mean, obviously, when a host nation, advances to the Final Four and guarantees themselves, two more games, in the semifinals and a third place game or potentially a championship, it bolsters, what can happen, locally as well. But overall, I mean, I thought that there was a time there where they were concerned about hitting, that half $500 million projection, and they hit it and exceeded it. So, that's good that they got there. As it relates to, some of the viewership numbers. I mean, obviously, UK, extraordinarily passionate behind the Lionesses, given their run in the Euros and obviously here to the World Cup. Had obviously, some very high profile supporters, namely some guy named Beckham, who just so happens to be in the news a lot lately, as we talked about in the previous segment. His club's doing very well, and so he's very prominent, and was very vocal and supportive of the Lionesses during their run. And then obviously, a fantastic, two global powers in Spain and England in a final. Unfortunately, the reigning champ, two-time defending reigning champs, were home, working, focusing on other agendas. Hopefully, an agenda that is about getting a new coach and getting refocused on being the best in the world, but more importantly, getting refocused on getting back to the game, that what made them successful and gave them the voice and the platform, and it was winning. And they got away from that. And I think the topic of equal pay. I think one of the things is that the breakdown shouldn't be. I think it should be a percentage of what you earn, and you share the kind of the comparison of the numbers to what the men's World Cup. I mean, almost 10 times the viewers, or 10 times the revenue. The viewers, eight, 9 times viewership, which obviously translates, to the incremental dollars. The men on a percentage basis are getting much less of that number. The women are getting a much larger percentage share of the revenue that they generate in the through the Women's World Cup. So at some level, if you're comparing, this is an apples and oranges, but if you're comparing the earning of each of the teams, I think if I recall correctly, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think like the men were getting 7% of the revenue, and the women kind of get into the 20 percentile. I mean, that's significant. I mean, if the men were getting 20% of $6 billion, I mean, obviously the numbers would be just stupid, right? I mean, but the women are they're getting a larger percentage. I think with anything, I think, the percentages should be comparable. There should be, incentives for, and performance for advancing and for winning and all those kinds of things. But, it's the same conversation we have when we get back here and we're talking about WNBA or WPSL or whatever. I am a huge supporter of women's sports, and I want to see it grow and flourish. But the WNBA is a league that loses money, and it wouldn't exist if the NBA didn't fund it. Okay. And yet you have athletes who are tremendous athletes. Do I think their wages should go up? Yeah, absolutely. I think they should. But compare yourself to an NBA franchise and say we should be getting charter flights and we should be getting this, that, and the other. Like, you don't generate the revenue. They're giving away tickets for noon games. At some level, and I say that, with all the support of saying, I want you to get everything you earn. Get what you earn. If you want to make an exciting product and more companies are going to invest and sponsor you and generate more money, then you should get that as the athlete or the talent, you should get more. Absolutely, 100%. But I don't think that you should use the men to compare, your earning potential, because it's two different things. And
100%.
we get it. We get in. There's women's sport. Obviously, there is a lot of discussion about biological men finding their way into women's sports, and I'm glad we don't spend a lot of time talking about it here. But I would much rather see women excel in their sports and earn accordingly. But let's not get on a soapbox and say that because the men are losing in the round of 32 and the women were two-time world champs, that all of a sudden there's equal pay, because one, different leagues, different talent levels, different tournaments. But for where you and I sit, it's looking at a business and an economical decision. We wouldn't make this decision if we were running a business. Why does this need to be factored in when federations are trying to run a business as well? And so
a global business, literally.
A global business.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you don't see, women playing in the English Women's Premier League getting paid the same wages that players, that are playing for Man City. The women for Man City and the women for Man United and the women for Arsenal are not getting paid at the same rate, weekly wages that the men are. They're not. You know why? Because the revenue is different. TV contracts, sponsorships, sales, etc.
Very different. And just to clarify, I said 2.5 billion, 1.5 billion viewers for the men's World Cup final. And just so people have a bit of an insight on how much of a difference there is, 550 million people tuned in for the game of Ecuador, the opening game, Ecuador versus Qatar. 550 million people, right? That's ridiculous. So this conversation of comparing really needs to disappear. We need to go back to the drawing board and say, how do we help women's sport prosper, thrive, and do its best, right? And work that way. Stop the comparison, stop this noise, stop these agendas that are being pushed by these interesting characters. Focus on the growth of the sport and work in silence and build. That's the most important thing.
I totally appreciate the passion, but it's funny that passion is quite muted when it comes to a biological male setting a women's weightlifting award or a swimmer. Where is the same passion and enthusiasm that is there for equal pay in women's sports and men's sports, but you won't protect your women's sports from biological male show? I mean,
shout out to Riley Gaines. She's definitely a soldier. She's fighting the fight, and
she made a lot of progress. Martina Navratilova, has supported her. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner is right there with her. As certainly someone who represents that that community. It's like, I can't imagine, the trauma, et cetera, that some of those female athletes have been exposed to. But more importantly, it's about just the integrity of sport in general. I mean, level playing fields are what really determine athletic integrity. And we've dealt with this with used to enhance performances and all those kinds of things. And testosterone going through puberty as a man is a huge advantage when it comes to 10 years down the road when you decide you want to change genders and then compete as a woman. We don't again, it's don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but I go back to, where is the passion and enthusiasm and ferocity to protect your women's sport in that vein that exists when we're talking about equal pay. And again, equal pay is the wrong term. It's earn. You should achieve the maximum value. And so like if the women win the World Cup, they should win a percentage of the revenue than a men's team that doesn't advance beyond the group stage kind of thing. And so I'm
tons of sense.
totally behind all that. But the dollars that the tournaments that they play in, that they generate, dictate that 7% for the men versus 20% for the women is a significant financial difference.
For sure, it's madness. But anyway, we will keep going